Community buttons. It says going live, going there. Hello, everybody out there in YouTube land. It's good to welcome you to Pima GOP headquarters here in Tucson at the corner of Fort Lowell and Campbell. Great to have all of you with us, and I know you're excited about hearing from our county sheriff, Mark Napier, and he's, I think, our fifth guest on our brown bag lunches on Wednesdays here at headquarters. We have a great group in the house. We've got our former county supervisor, Paul Marsh, to my right, your left in the audience. Always good to have Paul with us. And we have our candidate for Vail School Board. Yes, our Chris King is here in the group. To my left, your right. And we got a full table, including Barney Brenner, the ever-present campaign coordinator for Mark Napier. So with that, I'll introduce our sheriff, Mark Napier.
Thank you.
And good to have you with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I apologize in advance. I've got to do some promotions, which are a very happy thing in law enforcement. So I have to leave here at about 12:35. We're promoting a captain, a couple of lieutenants, and a couple of sergeants today. I just kind of give you a recap of some things that are going on at the Sheriff's Department. Obviously, COVID is a thing. It's a big deal for county sheriffs because we're very worried about it getting into our detention facility. Once it gets into general population, because of the close quarters, it spreads like wildfire. And I know the sheriff up in Maricopa, he's having issues, and most certainly the Arizona Department of Corrections is having significant issues. But I'm really happy to say that we have embarked on some protocols that are really helping us a lot. Early on in the COVID crisis, I kind of saw this coming down the road, and I thought this is going to be a deal. And I have a good friend in Dr. Richard Carmona, former U.S. Surgeon General. I brought him on as a special advisor to me. I'm a very good public safety person. It's what I've done my whole life, but I don't understand public health. Most certainly the former U.S. Surgeon General does. So I had him look at everything our department does and provide me advice on how we could better do those things, especially in the jail. What we're doing in our jail is going to become a national model. How we screen our personnel as they come and go, and our inmates, and how we segregate before we get into general population. So as I stand here right now, the only people in the jail that have COVID that we know of, we knew before they got inside our wall. So we're able to segregate those people from general population and keep it out of the jail. We have only had a few cases of personnel, and with the exception of one person, that all came from outside. In other words, in one case, one of our deputies had a wife who was a nurse. She caught it. She gave it to the deputy. The deputy gave it to a couple of their peers. So we've done a really good job of managing COVID. It's most certainly not over. We still got an uphill slog. It's going to be with us for a while. So we're going to stay vigilant on that and keep doing the things that we're doing in the detention facility. As you probably know, yesterday was the 30th of June, which is the end of my budget year. And I'm happy to say that the report I got yesterday would indicate that we should come in ballpark around $1 million under budget. Now, in the last 3 fiscal years, if you combine that million, which may be more like 2 million, I'm being conservative on the million because some things haven't washed out yet. That'll be $12.2 million surplus in 3 budget years. Now, that's kind of odd for public sector government because when you become a public sector executive, that money looks like monopoly money. I don't see it that way. I see it like I have a fiduciary responsibility over those tax dollars. I look at the Pima County Sheriff's Department as a business, and that makes some of my people mad. I'll be honest about that. They want me to be a cop. I was a cop. I'm a decorated cop. I was a cop for 30 years. I'm the CEO of a really large business right now. The Pima County Sheriff's Department employs 1,500 people, nearly 1,500 people. My budget is $160 million. We serve an area of 9,200 square miles, and I have multi-millions of dollars of fixed assets. If I'm not a business leader, what am I? I mean, you have to have business acumen that you apply to this job. And I look at this job, and I'm going to expend money, and what's the return on investment? What am I going to get back from that? And we push budget accountability down to the lieutenant level, the cost center manager level, which again is a new thing. And it's not always going to be popular. but I'm pretty sure I was not elected as a popularity contest. When you unseat an incumbent, it's because you want change. That's why the incumbent is no longer there. You bring somebody on because you want change, and change is sometimes not always going to be welcomed by everyone. If there was not some disharmony or angst or uncomfortableness, I wouldn't be doing my job because you elected me to bring change to the department. That's exactly what I'm doing. So budget-wise, we're doing fantastic. We've got 2 classes in the academy right now, a deputy class and a corrections officer class. When those 2 classes graduate, we will be at or very, very close to 100% staffing. And then we've done that while balancing our budget. We've also done that while we've given back $5 million in raises to our corrections officers and our deputies. We have significantly enhanced our recruiting efforts and raised our base pay, so we're now marketplace competitive. We were not. Believe it or not, January of 17, when I took office, a starting deputy made $20.85 an hour. Today, that same deputy makes $25.50 an hour. We are now marketplace competitive. When I took office, a starting corrections officer made $17.52 an hour. We could not hire at $17.52 an hour. Today, that same corrections officer makes $21.50 an hour. We had to raise the bottom pay in order to be marketplace competitive so I could staff the organization the way it should be. So we've made great strides in that department. We're really looking at our recruiting model from a business standpoint, going all the way down into the high schools to try to recruit high school kids into the jails, give them a life path into the jail at 18. We're partnering with the JTED program, specifically at Sunnyside High School, to take some of these kids that may not have a defined life path, and inner city kids and kids from minority and socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, to make a more diverse workforce. So we're saying if you go through these electives during your high school career, what we'll do is we'll fast track you at 18 to be a corrections officer, and you'll be making $21.50 an hour with full benefits. You know what some of these high schools kids have said to us? Gee, my dad doesn't make that much money. So this is where we got to do. You know, when you look at recruiting, you got to go down to the roots, and you got to really recruit up from there. So we're really championing that effort, and that's near and dear to my heart because I spent a good portion of my police career on the south side of Tucson. I love the south side of Tucson. I'd go down there every chance I got. So we're doing a very good job with that. The other exciting news is I got a federal grant to hire 10 additional deputies. What we're going to do with that, and Paul will appreciate this because he understands the layout, is for the longest time, the Sheriff's Department has underserved the area from the western edge of the metropolitan Tucson area to the west out to Ajo and the Tohono O'odham Reservation. So we've really underserved the communities of Sassabee and Arivaca and that little pathway coming adjoining to the Tohono O'odham Reservation in the west out to Ajo. I got approval, federal funding to hire 10 more deputies. And I met with Mr. Huckleberry, and because we are living within our budget, I said I needed no problem. You're living within your budget. Go. So we're going to take the Robles Junction facility that we already have out there. It's a building system. Go. So we're going to take the Robles Junction facility that we already have out there. It's a building sitting empty. It's very salvageable, and we're going to create a new district specifically to address that pocket of area that was really underrepresented for many, many years, and address transnational crime threats. And that's where they're coming up. The drug trafficking, the human trafficking are coming up through that corridor. And it's kind of a dead space out there. So we're going to be doing that. In fact, that's one of the people I'm promoting today is to take that position out there to get that district up and running. So it'll be a lieutenant will be out there, and she'll initially have 2 deputies with her. And then as we get the federal funding, we'll hire 10 additional deputies and get 2 more sergeants and staff that as a district. What I'm excited about is because that district doesn't have a high call load, I can pick that asset up and move it anywhere I need to in the county. So let's say that we have a real problem with burglaries in the foothills. I can pick up 5 deputies and a sergeant and say, you know what your job is? Your job's to go up there and knock that problem out. Your job's to go over here and knock this problem out. So I've got an asset that I can move around to crime problems that pop up from time to time to be much more proactive. The other thing that we've done, I worked with Mr. Huckleberry on this, is to tag on to some bond funding that the county was already doing because I needed new aircraft. We currently fly fixed wing aircraft because the cost of flying a fixed wing is much less than helicopters, about a quarter of the cost. But we've been basically flying very used cars, so to speak. You know, we've got two of them. We keep robbing Peter to pay Paul to keep one flying. But I've got authorization to spend $7.5 million to buy two brand new fixed wing aircraft with state-of-the-art flare balls on them, which allow the aircraft to see at night. Then I'm going to take the existing aircraft that I have, wire them together, and put them out at the Ajo airport. And we'll have finally air assets in the western region of the county. And I believe that once we start flying out there at night along the Total Auto Reservation, the western part of the county, it's going to be like you walked into a room and turned it on the light and see all the cockroaches, because we're missing a lot out there. The good thing about fixed wing versus helicopter is everybody's seen the light on a helicopter following things around and hear the pop, 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 pop. Well, we orbit several thousand feet higher, and the bad guys don't know we're there. They don't hear us. They don't see it. They don't hear us. They don't see us, especially at night. And with a state-of-the-art flare ball, we can see to the benefit of the county. Law enforcement reform is out there. In the last probably 3 weeks, I've been on conference calls with the White House, members of Congress and Senate from both parties. We've reviewed Senator Tim Scott's bill for police reform, and Nancy Pelosi and that crowd. They're at odds. I don't know that anything's going to happen with these reform efforts. There are some things in both packages that aren't bad. They're actually good suggestions. And there are some things that are just horrible. A couple of the things that are horrible is we'll abolish the police. That's just stupid. It's just a dumb idea. Defunding the police. You're asking us to do more, to take on more responsibility, provide more service. You need to provide more assets, not less. So on my desk at the office is the final draft of what we will be implementing as our reform plan for Pima County Sheriff's Department. I believe that you do something, you don't have something done to you. So you guide your own change, and that's what we're going to be trying to do. So we'll be launching that right after the 4th of July holiday. There's some really good stuff in there, some stuff that I think will enjoy a lot of support in the community. It is, again, change for the department, and some people don't like change, and that's fine, but it's necessary change. A lot of what we do is very good. It's just not transparent. I hate that word transparency, but it applies. We already banned the chokehold. Okay, but nobody knows that. Why? Because we don't put it out there. We're already doing de-escalation training. We're already monitoring our use of force. We're doing so much that's good. So we're going to push a lot of that out in front. Stuff that you would normally have to do a public records request, we're going to put right out on our website, forward facing, right out in front of you. So there's going to be some really exciting news coming out with respect to law enforcement reform, but we're going to guide that. If you're leading something, you're very seldom run over by it. I don't want to be run over by this. Everyone, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican, conservative or progressive, everybody should be concerned about the move towards nationalization of police. When they talk about national policies, national protocols, national accreditation, we should everybody, bipartisan, should sit back and go, no, that's a bad idea. We don't have a nationalized police force for a really good reason, especially because you elect the sheriff. I'm an elected official. I'm elected by the popular vote of this county and entrusted with public safety in this county, not the people in Washington, D.C. We are not Minneapolis. We're not Los Angeles, and we're not Atlanta. We're Pima County, Arizona. That's why you have localized control over law enforcement. So we should all be pushing back against any of that. Well, some of my Democrat friends say, well, but, Sheriff, there's some good things in there. I said, okay, so you're willing to allow nationalization of police policies now. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Okay, let's say 3 administrations down the road, we have a president that makes Donald Trump look like a left-wing lib. Are you still comfortable with Washington, D.C. setting policy for police in your community? Well, no, that would be bad. Yeah, that's my point. We don't want nobody wants that. It's bad public policy. We've had localized control over law enforcement for hundreds of years for a reason, and we should all be given pause on that. We are certainly busy. I'm happy to say that this morning I received the endorsement of the Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce, which is a good endorsement to have. I'm pursuing several other endorsements. The campaign's been endorsed by Barbara LaWall, a Democrat, longtime county attorney, which is odd, but Barbara's known me for 30 years. She's also knows the difference between the different sheriffs that this county's had, because she's been in office for a very long time. I've also been endorsed by all 4 sheriffs that abut our county, that being Santa Cruz with Sheriff Estrada down there, out in Cochise with Sheriff Daniels, over in Yuma County, Sheriff Wilmot, and north of us with Sheriff Lamb, who I'm very jealous because he's so much prettier than I am. He just is. Mark's beautiful, and we kid around a lot, but we really get along very well. I've also been endorsed by Steve Farley. Steve Farley knows me, has known me for a long time. These may seem odd endorsements, but that's really what you want from a sheriff. This is not a partisan position. You're not elected to be the sheriff of Republicans of Pima County or Democrats of Pima County. And one time I wrote public safety on a whiteboard when I was speaking. I stood back and looked at it and I said, you know what I don't see there? The letter R or D. Public safety is not a partisan issue. It's not a conservative or progressive issue. It's a quality of life issue. It's a community issue. As Barney will point out often, it seems sometimes when I'm in this job, I realize that my entire life was a dress rehearsal for this job. That everything I did unknowingly was to prepare myself to do this job, which I could not have foreseen in December of 1981 when I was a young, skinny, good-looking, okay, it was a long time ago, a young, skinny, good-looking police officer. But my life's been very purposeful. I went back to school, got a bachelor's degree in social psychology, got a master's degree in criminal justice from Boston University. I taught for Boston University at the master's level for 15 years. So I understand my craft. This is my 4th law enforcement agency. I worked in Iowa, then the Tucson Police Department, the Glendale Police Department, now here. So I have a broad diversity of experience. I was an administrator at the University of Arizona, so I understand a lot about the administration in the public sector. I think that's why we've managed to save $12.2 million in 3 years. If you look back in our budget, the prior sheriffs were spending monopoly money. They would blow through their budget, and you'd say, well, that's inconsequential. No, it's not, because as Paul knows, the sheriff can't run a deficit. So if I come in $5 million over budget, county's got to find that money, because I cannot run a deficit. That's money that doesn't go to roads, doesn't go to other things. Now, I will take, as long as I brought up roads, how many of you would like to drive on a great road to a dangerous neighborhood? Anybody? No. I'm sorry, I get tired of hearing about roads. All right. Fundamental to the quality of life in our community is public safety. Businesses do not settle into counties that they believe are unsafe for their employees, their business, the families of their employees. The linchpin of economic development, of stability in a community, of quality of life in community is public safety. That's the big deal. We could completely turn over the Board of Supervisors, and it would be of little consequence to public safety if you don't have the right sheriff, right? Because the sheriff's got to champion things like Stone Guard, additional funding, additional equipment, additional staffing, public safety initiatives. You've got to have a sheriff that's championing those things. Absent that, it really is of little consequence who inhabits the Board of Supervisors. I'll give you a contrast. As you probably know, my deputies were involved in a shooting last week. Within 1 hour, I was talking to both of those deputies personally. Within 2 hours, I was already given a media statement about what occurred. That was 2 hours, not 2 months. I'm just saying there's a contrast there. So we're on top of these things, mainly because I've been a cop my whole life, and I was a real cop. I'm a decorated law enforcement officer, and I understand that they don't want the boss messing with the investigation. I have smart people that do that. So when we have a deputy involved shooting, I go out and I see my people that are involved to see how they're doing from a mental health perspective. Do you need anything? Are we doing everything we need to do for your well-being? And then I make sure that we get a statement out very, very quickly, because in a vacuum of information is never filled with good things. Never. It's kind of like, I liken it to if you're dating somebody and they're late or they don't pick up their phone. You don't imagine, well, they're at Ross shopping for something. No, they're out cheating on you or something, right? Because you always fill that void of information with bad things. So we're getting out in front of information consistently. To that end, we have hired a former news reporter, and we have got a mini studio now at the Sheriff's Department. So we can literally create our own news, which is valuable. And I got this through my interaction with major sheriffs across the country. They said, you know what, if you want to manage the message, which sometimes you do need to do, why not have your own studio where you can do your own stand-up, answer the questions, and when the media says, Sheriff, we'd like an interview. Oh, here it is right here. We're already done. Oh, and they say thank you because they don't want to do that either. We've just handed them what they needed on a silver platter. So our relationship with the media is a lot better than it has been because we understand what they need, because I have a reporter, Kevin Adger, you might remember, was a reporter here for quite a long time. He's now on staff and can advise me about these things. And in closing, the one thing I wanted to do as the sheriff is to broaden our influence. I've been elected to be the vice president of Arizona Sheriff's Association, elected by my peers, which is kind of a nice thing. But larger than that, I've been elected to be the vice president of Major County Sheriffs of America, and that's limited to the 102 largest sheriffs in the United States. And in that role of vice president, I have access to Washington, D.C. And policy. So we're trying to head off some of this bad policy in Washington, D.C. because the major county sheriffs represent, as I said, 102 largest sheriffs in the United States, but that's about 175 million registered voters. So we have political clout, and we have from the very far left sheriffs to the very far right sheriffs, but all of them are have very substantial departments. In January, a year from January, I'll assume the role of president of Major County Sheriffs of America, and that will really put Pima County on the map, as we should be. We're the largest border county in the United States. There are 31 counties that abut the U.S.-Mexico border. We are the largest. It's time that we behave like a major county sheriff's department, and that means you're involved. That means you're engaged. That means you're respected by your peers. We can't build a wall around Pima County and pretend that things that happen outside of our county don't impact public safety in this county. That's silly. We need to be involved. We need to be directing policy. So we need to be at the table. You're either at the table or you're on the menu. I don't want us to be on the menu. So we're at the table all over the place, which keeps me very busy, but that's fine. I'm happy that we were involved in trying to stop some of these very, very odd reform efforts. One of them was to eliminate qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is what protects you from personal liability when you act in a way that you believe to be legal at the time. You're doing everything right. You could even be found to follow department policy, be legally justified, and still be sued and lose everything you own. I don't know anyone that would stay in this profession if qualified immunity went away. My son is a Tucson Police Department officer on duty right now. I would tell him to find another job. You have to, Travis. Otherwise, unless your community otherwise indemnifies you, I would assume you'd be like a lawyer and have to get a $5 million personal umbrella policy, and I don't know who pays for that. Some kid making $55,000 a year is going to pay $2,000 or $3,000 a year for an umbrella policy, if you could even get it. If you could even get insured, and then we don't know. So, well, that sounds like a really neat idea. Is cops are getting away with this, they should be held liable. We already are. If you do something like that moron in Minneapolis did, he should be civilly and criminally liable for what he did. It was the most outrageous thing I've seen in the 38 years I've been doing this. There is no justification for that, none. And by the way, that was not a chokehold. We have never been trained to put our knee on somebody's throat until they die. When they're not struggling, they're not doing anything. This is not a training issue. It's not a policy issue. It's not a reform issue. This was murder, just absolute murder on the part of that officer. And the very last thing I'll say, and then I've got about 5 minutes or so before I need to head out, is I've been pointing out to the community we need to push back on some of this narrative. And I've asked African-American leaders if they believe that bias is wrong. And they say, well, yeah, Sheriff, bias is wrong. Well, is prejudice wrong? Well, yeah, Sheriff, prejudice is also wrong. Well, is stereotyping wrong? Yeah, Sheriff, stereotyping is wrong. And would you say discrimination is wrong? Yes, discrimination is wrong. So those four things are wrong? Yes, they're wrong. Are they always wrong? Yes, they're always wrong. Are they wrong 100% of the time? Yes, they are. Even when you do them against police officers. Well, no. I have the moral high ground here. I do. I stand on the moral high ground because I say those things are always wrong. They're never right. They're never justified. And you cannot do them against police officers. If you allow it about any group, you risk allowing it about every group. And it is always, always wrong. I know how my son was raised. I know what's in his heart. I know what's in my heart. I know the law enforcement people in this community. There is no evidence of systemic racism or police brutality. There's no evidence to support that. There's none. Do we have bad apples? Yes. Do other social groups and religious groups and community groups have bad apples embedded in them? Yes, but it would be completely inappropriate of us to say that people who are engaged in their First Amendment right to protest, and then a couple of them go off and break windows, we can't say that they're all criminals, can we? Because doing so would be inappropriate. And we agree with that. I don't buy this idea that you can say things about law enforcement officers with that broad brush, that bias, that prejudice, that stereotyping and that discriminatory language, and that's somehow okay. It's not okay. It is not okay. We should not allow it about anybody. So with that, I will take questions here for about 10 minutes.
With all your qualifications and the things you're doing, why would anybody think they ought to run against you to replace you?
Well, I think that, well, I saw his sign. He said, they say we need him. Not sure why, but he had his chance. The thing was handed to him on a silver platter, and he did a pathetically bad and incompetent job. And I've been cleaning up that debris field for 3.5 years. It's not done yet. And there's still people that want to go back to that. There's still people that believe they're special, that they're entitled to this crony environment that permeated that place for decades. I don't have any peeps. I have employees. I have people that work for me. I'm not running a pirate ship. There are people that are unhappy with me. Some of that I wear as a badge of honor. I'm holding people accountable. And that's going to make some people unhappy. They would like to go back to the old way of doing business. This county does not want us to go back to a headline that says the second in command of the department absconded with RICO money under a federal indictment for corruption. We don't want that in our county. We don't want $100,000 a year crony positions that don't need to exist. I made people mad when I got there because I went up to a person and said, explain to me what your job's about, why we should be paying you $100,000 a year for a job that seems made up to me. Well, we don't need your services anymore. Done. We don't, and you know what? We didn't suffer because of that. There were several positions that were eliminated. We eliminated executive level staff that was completely unnecessary. I type fast for a guy. I can do a lot of my own admin stuff. So we eliminated positions that were completely unnecessary in the sheriff's office, saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing so. Was that popular? No. When I went to the deputies and I said, okay, let's look at your compensation, but I'd like it to be merit-based because that's kind of how the world works. You know, you should get compensation based on merit. Well, we don't want that. Well, you know, it's a better argument than I breathed for 12 months, therefore I'm entitled to a raise. I would rather be able to demonstrate that you've earned additional compensation. My kids at Raytheon, they don't get a raise if they don't perform. My wife's a nurse. My youngest daughter's a nurse. They don't get a raise unless they perform. So we tried to bring merit-based compensation, and they rejected that. There was other compensation things that they're now litigating against me because I looked at that and I said, there's absolutely no reason. There's no return on investment for the expenditure of that money. We should not be doing that. And they're mad and they're litigating against that. I'd like to spend another 4 years as your sheriff because we still have work to do. I'm changing culture, and organizational change and organizational culture takes time, and it's always going to be pushed back against.
So, Sheriff, during your tenure, how has attrition fared? Is it more or less?
It's
Is it
been
high?
very stable. It has not bubbled up one way or the other. Our attrition rate was unacceptable when I took office, primarily because we were not marketplace competitive on pay. There was, and less so now, a high demand for law enforcement employees. Nobody could recruit because they're just we were at 3.5% unemployment. Remember that? That wasn't that long ago. So it was very hard to recruit. So communities like Marana and Oro Valley, because their tax base is different, could outmarket me for these employees. So we had people jump ship and go there. I applaud these kids that do that. That's, if you can go make a better living doing a lesser degree of work, God love you. Go forward and do that. So I don't begrudge them doing that. But our attrition rate has stayed very constant over the last 10 years. I know that my opponent would like you to believe that people are just flying out of the door. It's not true at all, and we can prove that. In fact, we'll be proving that he's been lying about a lot of things. There's a difference in a campaign between stating your case and being zealous about stating your case and lying. What my opponent's done is lying, and he's going to be called out on those things. Let me just give you one. He's been saying that I eliminated the CLEP-C group. CLEP-C was the community panel brought about by the Board of Supervisors to monitor the Stone Garden program, remember? The Board of Supervisors created the CLEP-C, not the sheriff. I had nothing to do with that. Because I did not create it, I also could not end it. I had no authority to end it. It was ended on a majority vote of the Board of Supervisors because it had become dysfunctional in their opinion. I had nothing to do with that. My opponent's running around saying that I did that unilaterally. That's a lie, and he knows better. He knows better. He knows that's not truthful. If you cannot trust a sheriff of all elected officials, to tell the truth during the campaign, why in the world would you want to empower that person as a chief law enforcement officer of your county? I can't get my mind around that one. If you can't tell me the truth when you're running for office, I don't know how you'll ever tell me the truth when you're an incumbent in office. And we're going to be pressing back on some of that. I'm a nice guy, but I didn't survive working the South Side because I'm a pushover. So we'll be pushing back on that, and he will get more shrill and more angry and more these unusual statements, shall we say, as we get called out on these. But we've remained silent. There's a saying, when your enemy's doing something stupid, don't stop them. If your enemy's digging a hole, provide him a shovel. So for months, we've been allowing him to say anything he wants to. And we've been making note of these things that now are public record. And we'll see how he can walk these things back, because he can't. Because we know when they were said, where they were said. He's going to have to be held accountable for those things. It's not because I'm mean-spirited. It's, you play that way, you pay that way.
Mark, I like what you say, and especially regarding budget, because I was very involved in that years ago. I have one comment to make. You guys are doing a great job, but then you've got a group right inside of you. The city is having problems. How can we get that shifted out so we get a good job from that area as well?
Well, my primary concern, Paul, as you know, is the sheriff's department. I think there are things that perhaps we get into January. I'll give you one example, and some of my friends at TPD won't like this example, but they fly a very expensive helicopter around, and we do need air assets within the city of Tucson. And they can't afford to fly it very often, so it's not as effective. I'm going to be orbiting around in a much lower cost platform. They could pay me a fraction of what they're paying, and we could do a better job providing them service. So there are things that we can collaborate on, and that's just an example, that might diminish the load for the Tucson Police Department and also be good for the Sheriff's Department. But I don't know where the city's headed with this stuff. This idea that we're going to defund the police, I kind of thought they already did that from what I've seen. Because when I think we had 1,100 sworn people when I was the captain of the South Side Division, I didn't think we had enough then to do policing the way I thought we should do policing. And it doesn't mean that you're not progressive. There's this dichotomy that makes my head explode. This one that says you're either a traditional law enforcement agency or you're a progressive law enforcement agency. I think you can be both of those things. I think you can be progressive, meaning you engage the community, you're looking for better ways to do business, some progressive ideology, and still If you committed a crime in this county, we're coming after you, and we're not going to apologize. We're going to track you down. We got hunters. That's what my deputies are. They're hunters, and they're going to go hunt you, and that's what they're supposed to do. But they're also in the schools. We have a therapy dog program. We have a lot of very progressive programs. So I think you can do both. I don't think it's one or the other.
Well, the reason I bring that up is you guys are the sheriff and you cover the city. Because it's part of it. City's part of the county. And yet I see more police officers around town. Sheriff, not the city. Are you guys having a fill in for them in budget?
Well, we're, as you know, a lot of the our jurisdiction abuts the city. So you're going to see sheriff department cars coming and going because we have the Rincon district, the Foothills district, the Santa Napier. So we're out there a lot, and we are very visible.
That's good.
And that's a good thing. You know, we rebranded our cars shortly after I became sheriff to make our professional appearance better, make us more visible. So there are some challenges. A lot of this bleeds over into the county. We were just talking yesterday about the number of police pursuits that we're getting in. And we think part of that is because when somebody runs from the Tucson Police Department, they don't chase them. When they run from us, we do. So they don't know they're in the county. They see lights come on behind them. That, all I got to do is speed away, and they'll give up. Well, no, my hunters keep going. We're going to chase you down, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
That's great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, guys. I gotta go and promote some people. Happy day for some folks. Thank you for having me.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Charlie.
Thank you. Are we off?
No, you want to say something?
Yeah. I want to thank everybody out there in YouTube land for joining us, and thank Sheriff Mark Napier for a great job filling us in on his work force and his plans for the future. Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Next week.